Hello everybody, my name is Dee and welcome to Books and Quirks. Today I have a tag video for you. I haven't done one of these in a while. It is the 2018 mid-year book Freakout tag, and I know that practically everyone has done this already. I'm a little bit late, but it is still technically the middle of the year. The middle of the year actually fell on July 2nd, so I don't feel like I'm too late, but I know everyone else, I feel like everyone else has done it already. So I have the questions over here to my side. So if you see me constantly looking, that's what I'm looking at. As well as I jotted down some thoughts to some of these questions as well. So let me just get started. Oh, and by the way, I will put all of the information in the description below, as well as the original creator, the questions, and all that good stuff. Number 1 says, best book you've read so far in 2018. Well, there have been a few, so I broke it down into categories. For mystery, the best book I read so far was my first Agatha Christie book, and that was And Then There Were None. Such a good book. I understand why it was a classic, why it is a classic, and I just so enjoyed it. It's a very short, tiny book, but in my opinion, it packs a punch. I really loved it. For historical fiction, the best book I've read so far this year was Songs of Love and War by Santa Montefiore. This was such a good historical fiction taking place around the Irish Revolution, before and during World War I. Obviously, it takes place in Ireland. And it was just such a good book. It's about family, relationships. I learned a lot about history reading this book that I didn't know about. I didn't know anything about the Irish Revolution prior to this book, so I thought it was excellent. I didn't pull out all of these books from my shelf, but I will leave a picture. The best thriller and horror that I read was The Fireman by Joe Hill. This was my first Joe Hill book. Joe Hill is the son of Stephen King, so I was very much excited and I hyped it up in my own head. And for me, it lived up to the hype. I absolutely loved it. It wasn't really, I mean, it's under the horror category, but to me, this book wasn't horror. It was just weird. It was just weird and kind of creepy, and that type of book. Stephen King does that sometimes, where it's not necessarily horror, it's just weird. And I thought that kind of was this book. And it's about a disease that runs through the United States, and people form these sort of black and white scales on their skin, and then they spontaneously combust. And the main character finds out that she is pregnant and she also has the disease. So the whole story is about her trying to survive the disease, to the point where she can give birth to her baby. So it was quite an exciting book and I really enjoyed it. And the best fantasy book that I read so far is the Doomsday Book. The Doomsday Book is by Connie Willis, and it is a time travel book. It takes place in 2 time periods. It takes place in the 14th century London when the Black Plague was hitting, and it takes place in present time. And in present time in this book is actually the future. It's, I think, 2038 or something like that. Can't remember the exact date, but it was excellent. Number 2 says the best sequel you've read so far in 2018, and that is The Knight's Shadow by Sebastian de Castell. This is the second book in the Greatcoat series. Very reminiscent. The series is very reminiscent of like the Three Musketeers. I absolutely love this series, and I can't wait to continue on. Number 3 says a new release you haven't read yet, but really want to. A new release that I haven't read yet, and I don't know that it's too new anymore. It might be a year old already, but it's The Hate U Give. I've wanted to read this since it first came out. It is a YA book. It's being made into a movie, and it is about, I believe it is about a Black person being murdered by the police, which is very relevant to what's happening in our country, in the US right now. So I wanted to read it, and I just haven't gotten a chance to buy it yet, but I will read it. Number 4 says the most anticipated forthcoming release, and that is My Mamma Mia Summer. This is actually coming out on July 12th, so just in a few days. And I'm so looking forward to this. This is about a woman. This is a romance. It's part of it's one of my picks for my summer book bingo and summer romance book bingo. And it is about a woman who loves Broadway shows, loves musicals. She loves Mamma Mia. Her life is all sort of falling apart, so she decides to take Mamma Mia and make that a blueprint for what her life should be. So she takes off, moves to Greece, and starts mimicking things in Mamma Mia. I just think it's going to be great. I love Broadway musicals. I love everything about Mamma Mia, and I just think it's going to be so much fun, this book, and I cannot wait. Number 5 says the biggest disappointment so far in 2018, and that is The Revolution of Marina M. This is a historical fiction around the time of the Russian Revolution, and it was just a big disappointment. I don't know what this book was trying to be. It was trying to be too many things. It started to get so weird. The entire book turned into like a sex romp. It was really strange, and yeah, I wound up finishing the book because I buddy read it with Cheryl of CR Flames fan, but it was not a good one. Number 6 says the biggest surprise so far in 2018, and I don't have a particular book for this one, but the biggest surprise for me in 2018 regarding books in general was how I have how I have fallen in love with the mysteries once again. I was never a big mystery reader. I mean, I went through a period in my teens where I read a few mysteries, but mysteries along the lines of like Mary Higgins Clark and things like that. But since then, I really haven't read a whole lot, maybe a handful. And I participated in March Mystery Madness this year, and I absolutely had a blast. Read some really great mysteries, and yeah, I'm excited to read some more, so that was a surprise for me. Number 7 says, favorite debut so far in 2018. My favorite debut is actually a NetGalley book that comes out in a couple of months, and it's called The Masterpiece by Fiona Davis. I absolutely loved this book. It centers around Grand Central Station, and it takes place partly in 1928 and partly in 1974, I think it was. In 1928, Grand Central Station was the highlight of New York City. It was gorgeous, the splendor, the artwork, the gold, the brass, railings, the gold paints, everything was just so beautiful. In the 1970s, however, though, and in the 80s actually, Grand Central Station was falling into disrepair. Nobody was cleaning it. Everything, the walls, the ceilings, the floors had turned black. Nobody wanted to go there anymore because it was not clean. And they found that the black was actually decades of tar and nicotine just building up. Now, apart from the book, now if you go to Grand Central Station, it's fully restored. It's back to its original splendor. It's gorgeous. It's a huge tourist attraction. But in the 1970s, that was not the case. And this follows, these two women in two different times, and their stories connect in an interesting way. And I just loved it so much. And that's definitely my favorite debut. It's going to debut, I think, in August or September, but I already filmed a review that I'll have coming out during that time. Number 8 says, newest fictional crush. So I usually do have a fictional crush, but I've gone through the books that I've read so far this year, and I don't think I have one this year. So I'm just going to say none for that one. Number 9 says newest favorite fictional character. So again, I was going through the books that I read this year, and I've come up with Vasya from the Bear and the Nightingale series. I think it's called the Winter Night series actually, but the Bear and the Nightingale is the first book in the series. Vasya, it starts out when Vasya is very young. She's a child. She is very spirited, very spunky. Absolutely loved this. This is a fantasy book. And it was just so good. I enjoyed the book, but I really enjoyed Vasya. I just thought I got a kick out of her. She was just great. Number 10 says a book that made you cry. The only book that made me sad, I'm not going to say it made me cry because that's not true, but it made me really sad was A Solace of Water by Elizabeth Byler Yountz. Um, this was a NetGalley book that will be coming out this summer. It follows two women. This takes place, first of all, in the 1950s. It follows a African American woman that just moved into town, and then a Amish woman who lives on the farms. And they form an unlikely friendship in the book, and it's just so beautiful. So many things happen. They each have, children. It involves that. They each have troublesome husbands, and there's that. There's a lot in this book, and I just thought it was so touching, and I really enjoyed it. It made me a little bit sad at parts. And it's really the only book that I read this year that made me that kind of, feeling that type of emotion. Number 11 says a book that made you happy. And for that, I'm going to go with Confessions of a Shopaholic. This was a recent romance that I finished actually this past week, and it was just so much fun. I read it in one day. It was just a fun read. And if you've watched the movie but haven't read the book, this book is actually quite different from the movie. The plot points move in different directions. So I would definitely give this book a go. If you enjoyed the movie, I think you'll enjoy the book, but it is quite different. But the main tone of it is the same as the movie, and the person that played Becky in the movie is very similar in terms of her personality. So I definitely would give this a go if you haven't yet read it. But I think everyone's probably read it by now. Number 12, favorite film and movie adaptations so far. And I've only read one this year, and Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. I read the book, and then I know a movie came out in the past few months. So after reading the book, I watched the movie. I didn't really care for the movie that much, but I really loved the book. Number 13 says favorite review you've written so far in 2018, and I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to pick a favorite, but I've written some really some reviews for some NetGalley books that I'm pretty proud of, and they're very detailed, and I think that they're decent enough. And so I'm going to say any one of those, but I don't have a favorite. Number 14 says the most beautiful book you've acquired, and that is And Then There Were Monsters by Emile Ferris. This is a graphic novel. I've talked about this book before. Absolutely gorgeous artwork, and the cover is the most beautiful of all. So this is the most beautiful book I've acquired. And number 15 says, what books do you still want to read by the end of the year? Oh my God, I don't know how you answer this question, especially if you're a book lover, if you're a big reader, because there are so many books. There are literally dozens that I want to read this coming for the rest of 2018. I want to continue on with Robin Hobb's books, which I haven't really done a whole lot of this year. I want to continue on with the Great Coat series, which I actually plan on reading, doing a buddy read later this month. I want to read The Wardrobe Mistress, which was a Walter Scott finalist. I want to read so many things. Dune. And yeah, so I can't pick just one. I mean, there are just so many, literally dozens. So I'll just leave it at that. So there you have it. Those are the 15 questions. I'm not going to tag anybody because, like I said, all my friends, everyone has basically done this. If by chance you haven't done this, then please do. It's still technically the mid-year if you do it in July. And yeah, that's all I have for you. Please look in the description for all of the information if you do want to do it. And I will see you all very, very soon. Bye.